Hey, what's going on, everybody? Isaac here with Civil Engineering Academy. I'm excited to jump on and do a quick introduction of this podcast episode that we recorded with a new guest that I have who actually reached out to me. If you are interested in joining the podcast, you can feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have you. Isaac at civilengineeringacademy.com. But he reached out to me. He's really motivated. You can tell he has a thirst for knowledge and he doesn't quit. This is Jed-Jason Ramos. And he's originally from California. He works for the Walsh Group now, but he details his whole experience through college, also what colleges can do to improve their course curriculum to help better prepare students that are taking the Civil FE exam. He details mistakes he's made, talks about his whole journey. There's really good stuff in here. So I just wanted to welcome you to this, and you know what, we also have some great resources. If you are studying for the FE or the PE exams, go to civilengineeringacademy.com. We actually just started up some cool starter toolkits, so if you go check out the FE exam or the PE exam, you can go check out those starter toolkits, and those include exams, some awesome videos that will help you kickstart your studies to make sure you're doing it the right way. We think they're sweet, so go check them out. We'll link them below. But anyway, what topics are you guys interested in? If you have more topics or guests you think would be real interested in interesting to have on the show, leave a description in the comments below and we'll get to those as well. Anyway, having said all that, let's get right to the interview because it's going to be a good one. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Good day to you. We're going to have a good one today. So we got Jed-Jason on with us today. How you doing, Jed-Jason?
I am doing great, Isaac. How are you doing?
Do you always say it together, Jed-Jason, or just Jed?
Well,
How does that work?
on my birth certificate, I have a hyphenated first name, um, but to everyone else, I go by just Jed.
Jed.
Yeah, just Jed.
Okay.
My mom wanted to be cool and give all of her kids hyphenated first names, and so it's not only me; it's actually with my two older sisters as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's kind of different because whenever you say your first name or say my first name, I always say Jed Jason. And they're like, which one do I say, Jed or Jason or both? Or
I
can I
think
call you
it's cool.
JJ?
I think it's cool. Jed-Jason. Well, we're excited to have you on the show. I think you've got a unique background. We want to hear about it. So as we start diving into this, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into engineering, what attracted you to it, what subjects you liked, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. So growing up, uh, I remember from as long as I can remember, right before I would go to bed as a little kid, my parents would actually quiz me on math flashcards before I
Whoa.
went to bed. Yeah, they were like, what are these multiplications right here? What's this addition? What's this subtraction? So like from a really young age, I really developed a love for math. And growing up, that's something I really excelled in. And the same with sciences too. But as well, my father, he actually is a civil engineer.
Mm.
He runs a design and surveying firm right now. And then as one of my older sisters got older, she actually ended up going to school for civil engineering as well. And so just kind of like throughout my whole life, it's just been there. It's always just
Wow.
been around me. And as I, got closer to picking a major when it came to college, it was pretty easy for me just because like it was kind of like all that I knew, and it was just
Runs in the
kind of work.
family.
Yeah, kind of runs in the family. And so yeah, just kind of took that ball and ran with it. And
So
then
were you like doing calculus at like 5?
no, I was only doing differential equations at that
Oh,
time. I'm just kidding. I'm just
wow.
kidding. No, no, I graduated actually at a young age. Right when I turned 17, I graduated and kind of went to college right after that. And I had this really like deep plan. I was like, I'm gonna graduate in 4 years. I'm gonna really make it a goal to graduate at 21. That plan didn't really work out. I'll kind of tell a little bit more about that later.
Sure.
But um, you know, school, it was just always something I really liked, and learning was always something I really liked, even till
That's so
today.
cool. I think that's fascinating. And, I applaud your parents. I mean, how many people are teaching, kids math that early? I don't think there's very many. So most people have to discover it later on that they enjoyed math. Or like me, I was like, I took those high school like assessment tests, and they're like, hey, you're pretty good at math. And I was like, oh, yeah, I don't mind that. That's
Just
cool.
happens.
So where are you now? Why don't you tell people where you're at now? What do you do?
Yeah, so I grew up in Hawaii. I grew up in Southern California. I was born in Hawaii. Um, I went to school at Brigham Young University-Idaho, and shortly after that, I got married to my beautiful wife, Selena, and then actually just what is it, almost a month ago, and then 2 weeks later, we moved to Texas in like the
Wow,
Metroplex area of Dallas. So,
awesome.
and
Man, you
I'm with
just been
the
running.
yeah, it's just kind of, ripped the Band-Aid off. Graduated, got married, moved out
That's
to another
exciting.
state. And now, yeah, now I'm with the Walsh Group. I'm a project engineer with them. I um, have been dealing a lot with design, build, heavy civil type construction work out here. And so that's always just been something I've been interested in ever since I got exposed to the industry.
That's exciting. Man, I can just tell that you are very motivated, and that's exciting. It's really refreshing to hear like how excited you are to jump into the industry, and I can just tell you got like a thirst for knowledge, and that's really cool too. So that's all good stuff. Speaking of that, one of the things I like to ask is maybe share a quality tip for other engineers or those maybe thinking about joining the engineering world, or it could be career advice too. What's something you learned when you jumped into the career? But any tip, tool, or any advice that you have for a rising engineer?
Yeah. Well, I guess I wouldn't really have too much advice for those that are already practicing.
Yeah.
But I would like to gear my answer towards those that are currently in school, whether they're thinking about engineering or they're currently in the program, about to graduate, or, maybe just a freshman. So I think I'd start gearing my answer first towards the freshmen or sophomores. I would say try and get internship well before your third or fourth year in your university. And the reason I kind of say that is because number one, it should show to employers that you're applying for that you're really dedicated to the industry and you want to learn a lot more about it. And that's the great thing about internships, is that it's all about learning, figuring out what you really, really, really want to do in your life. Um, and I have a good friend. I kind of wish I modeled my internship after him. He's a first year college student, and he's already got an internship, and
Wow.
he's really geared towards getting one every single summer for the entire duration that he's in college. And so I think the more that you can figure out if the industry is for you while at a younger stage in your college career, I think the better chances that you have to figuring out what direction that you want to go for your career. And
That's
so,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
I just to piggyback on that a little bit, I was in the same boat. I think I actually had worked at a call center, and the reason why I had drugged that out so long is because they were paying for my schooling. So these call centers, they pay well, and they also like pay your schooling, so you end up trying to balance that a little bit. But I think you're
Mhm.
right on. As soon as I knew at a certain point that I had to get into the industry to figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you want to do, what you want to specialize in, what, because there's so many different areas of civil engineering that you could dive into. You kind of have to figure out which one you like or prefer, because that's kind of where you're going to be headed for a little bit. So great advice.
Exactly, exactly. And I would say also, to just like add one more bit of that, um, I would say like start with like your professors as far as like trying to get internship experience, because they're so involved with the community of people and the network that they have. And sometimes, we kind of forget that they're the ones that are, in the heat of it. And that's exactly how one of my friends was able to get his internship. And he just simply asked our professor, he's like, hey, I'm looking for, an internship this summer. Do you have any info? And he's like, yeah, this company down the street.
Wow.
And then later on, he was able to get one.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I think a lot of people do forget, like, your professor who's dealing with research is in contact with lots of companies. They probably are like your best resource for networking anyway, and figuring out. And you have different professors that specialize in different things. So if you like water resources, go ask that guy. If it's structural, go ask that guy. And I think that's really smart. Good advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about this one? What's a lesson learned, whether it was through a mistake made or something you've seen from a distance? What's the story behind that? What's something that you've learned with a mistake?
Oh, yeah.
Or have you not
So
made any?
I've made plenty. I've made a plethora of mistakes. No, so kind of like what I was saying before with when I first got into college, I had this really set goal that I wanted to graduate by the I was 21. So my first 2 years, I got basically all my 100 and 200 level classes out of the way, all the maths, or all the 100 level maths and 200 level maths, and all the 100 and 200 level engineering classes. And it was towards the end of my sophomore year that I felt like my plans were going to change a little bit. And so I actually ended up at that point, at the end of my sophomore year, I went on a 2-year leave for some volunteer service for my church. And by the time that when I came back, can you imagine, not doing, like college education level math and engineering for 2 years and then coming back? It was kind of hard, especially for me, because right when I got back, the major, or our department, our engineering department, was saying, hey, in order for you to basically move on to your 300 and 400 level classes, you have to take this exam, and it's called the competency exam. Basically what it was, it tested you on basically your knowledge in statics, dynamics, strengths of materials. And so, can you imagine like me coming back from this and being like, yeah, you need to do this or else you can't move on. And I was like, what if I can't do this? I need to study like really hard. And so I was stressing out so much. You can ask anyone at that school during the time of the competency exam that it was probably the most stressful part of their college careers because of how much weight was on it. Okay. And they said if you couldn't pass this competency exam, that they're changing the format next semester to another type of exam called the engineering entrance exam. And so I was like, okay, I really need to do this. And you could have taken the exam as many times as you want until you passed, but because it was just so hard for me to grasp on like 2 years of knowledge that I had lost over 2 years, it was just so hard. And then after I spent so long, I couldn't get it. I couldn't get the competency exam in the way. And so I was faced with now this new format of they called it the engineering entrance exam. And to make things even harder for me was that they said, you only have 3 chances to pass this exam. So if you don't pass your first 2 tries, you're going to have to go through a remedial process in which you're going to have to sit down with some yeah, exactly, like just sit down with like workshops and sit down with professors to go over material. And guess what? I failed those first 2 times, and I had to go through the remedial process. And then they said, okay, if you don't pass after the 3rd time, you're basically going to sit down with the I think at the time it's called the department chair, engineering department chair, or someone really high up in the education department for engineering, and you're going to sit down with them and you're going to discuss alternative options for your education. And so by the time I got to my 3rd chance. And I'm sitting there. I was shaking throughout the entire exam, just trying to make sure that I was gonna pass this, because I had no alternative option. Civil engineering, that was what I wanted growing up.
No pressure.
But exactly,
Hey,
no
this sounds
pressure.
worse than like the FE or the PE. Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad for me, at least, like trying to just, grasp onto as much as I could remember, and channeling everything that I had in me, and with some divine intervention, I did pass the third try, and
Good.
I was able to get through to take my 300 and 400 level classes. And something I learned from that experience was that I work really well under pressure. And ever since then, I just kind of like discovered this new, um, I guess, approach to everything that I did. I was like, I'm gonna try and put as much pressure as I can on myself, and I know that I'm gonna do way better than if I didn't. And
Wow.
that ended up helping me, because throughout my internships and so far in my full-time career, uh, meeting deadlines and pressure and doing things on time and with quality, with a very small amount of leeway, is just has been a really huge asset for me as
Hmm.
I've grown into the industry.
Oh man, that is such good advice. You know what? I it reminded me of something that's happened recently over in my world over here. So I have twin daughters, and my wife has been trying to teach them piano during COVID in the
Oh
house.
man.
And then she was like, "Hey, let's do a small recital for them." And I could tell, they were getting nervous. There's anxiety there. But we have been taught just over years that when we have anxiety about something, a lot of people will make that, it could absolutely crush you. You know what I mean? If you let that anxiety crush you, it will. But what we've been teaching our daughters, and with ourselves, is that when we have anxiety, it's just kind of our mind, our body really telling us that it's go time. You know what I mean? And it's going to get really focused and honed in on the task at hand. And I love that you said when you're under pressure, when we have deadlines and stuff like that, I think it kind of puts us in that same kind of feeling where our bodies just get really focused on the task at hand and we just knock it out. I mean, there's a reason why people put off writing English papers till the last second, you know what I mean? And things like that. So I think you've definitely discovered something there. And, for you that works, that's an amazing experience that you had.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, it's definitely helped.
did that translate to passing the FE exam, or what happened there? Just curious there.
So I actually owe a lot to passing the FE exam to our civil engineering program, the engineering program in general at
Mm-hmm.
our university. The reason I say that is because basically when we start getting into engineering classes that are 200, 300 level, our professors, what they will do is they will actually give us the section of the FE reference handbook pertaining to that subject during our tests. So
Oh,
like whenever we were doing a test for statics,
smart.
they would give us the statics portion of the FE reference handbook, as well as, like the units and conversions and different nomenclature. And they'd give that portion to us. And then if it was strength of materials, they'd give us that strengths of materials portion, FE reference handbook, and give it to us then. And that was for every single class: soils, reinforced concrete design, anything, any class that it was, they gave us the FE reference handbook. And on top of that, in order to graduate, they made taking the FE exam a requirement. And so this whole time throughout our college career, we're gearing up not only for, graduating with a bachelor's degree, but passing or taking the FE exam, which I think is something that's really important to I guess realize when you're involved with this career path, because eventually that's the pinnacle, like getting a professional engineering exam. or a professional engineering license, that's the pinnacle of most civil engineers' careers. And so making that a priority while we're in school is definitely a huge um, a
Oh, yeah.
huge step for
And
us.
if you wait till you're after school, it does get very difficult because, like you said, I mean, you took some time off, but when you come back, you forget, you forget stuff very quickly.
Yeah,
So you got to get
yeah,
back into the grind. And I love that they're, I don't know if every university does that. I'm sure they don't, but they're already gearing you towards using the FE handbook by giving you
yeah,
those, those sections or those chapters as you're studying the subjects that you're working on. So I think
exactly.
that is a perfect tip.
Yeah,
Um,
and it
yeah,
was just great because by the time we're taking the FE exam, we're like, yeah, I know how this equation looks like, and I think this tip is something that other university students could maybe bring to their department head. Like, hey, what do you think of this idea of letting us use the FE reference handbook for some of our tests to help us get ready for the FE
they
exam?
should for sure do that. Yeah, if a university isn't drilling that in every student, especially with an ABET accredited school where it's required to pass to graduate, they definitely should do that. It would give everybody a leg up. And the other problem is a lot of the equations in the handbook don't match what's in your textbook. So a lot of people get thrown off with the different variables that are in the handbook because you're just like, they wrote that dumb, I'm not used to seeing it that way. It's like, yeah, well, at least you know how to solve the problem, right? So,
Exactly, exactly.
well, cool. Do you have, that's a great tip. Is there any other tips you want to hammer on the FE exam? Any books, courses, resources? It sounds like that would be it. Or is there any other tips that you have there?
No, yeah, I think something that I think is universal, whether that you're in school or you're out of school, is an effective, reliable accountability program. Whether that be with other students that are studying with you, keep each other accountable, or if you're just by yourself, like dial in on an accountability as far as what parts of each of the exam that you should be studying up until the exam. I think the method of accountability is just such a powerful tool, because if you think about it, that's exactly how we were able to progress throughout school. Throughout our entire lives, that's basically how we progress. Is that someone or something is keeping us accountable towards our actions, and having friends or a schedule or something, just something to keep you accountable, as well as the FE practice exam. I think that was a huge help for us because, and that's I think it's available through ncees.org.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we got it. And so honestly, if you can replicate as well as you can the testing environment, going into a locked room, and just having the book or the exam, the practice exam, and some scratch paper, and you just crank it out for I think it's like 6 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can just crank it out, and making sure that you stick to that 3-minute a question time limit. I think I've heard plenty of times before, everyone talks about that time management skill. And throughout when I was taking the exam, I would always make sure that I had, I was using my watch, and I was like, all right, I'm this many questions in. If I multiply this by 3, I should be this many minutes. I was just like, I was constantly thinking how fast I was working throughout the exam. And if you get stuck, honestly, just keep going to the next question. And it's just yeah, those are just
Well,
some universal tips for
yeah, those are great
taking.
tips. I always love asking people that, whether you've taken the FE or eventually you'll take the PE too. But, because everybody wants to hear from other people about their experience, what it was like for them, things of that nature. So I love hearing what other engineers say about that. So thanks for sharing that. Let's dive into something maybe you've worked on. Is there a recent idea or project that you've maybe worked on or you're involved with that might help others know a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so I guess I've found a passion or more so an interest in the design build aspect of construction, or the design build delivery when it comes to construction. The reason why is because uh, getting to work with all these different design companies and actually for those that are, I guess, not familiar with the design build delivery method, it's basically, instead of the standard bid build or, heavy bid in the beginning where, the engineer designs everything and the contractor builds it, it's more of like a joint team where the design and the building is happening all at once. And so I personally like that a lot because it gives me a chance to understand exactly the decisions that are made out in the field and how they complement each other with the decisions that are made in design, and having a say in everything as well. Um, and so it's a very integral process throughout the entire duration of the project. And I think it's just it's really interesting for me so far.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just it's a
Okay.
great way to understand all the different aspects of a project.
No, that's fantastic. And I think as you get even more and more experience, I bet if I asked you that question again, you'd come back with a really cool answer. And, going all the way back to mistakes we've made, there'll be mistakes, all throughout your engineering career, and you'll learn from them, and you'll develop, a knowledge of what to do and what not to do, and get a better feel for the whole process. So, those are all things that are going to come your way as well.
Yeah,
So I look forward to that.
I'm expecting it to come sometime soon. So
There you go.
yep.
All right. Well, I'm going to dive into some quick questions with you. You can, these can be short, they could be long, but just kind of a quick question around. Um, what's been the best advice you've ever received, or just good advice in general?
I think the best advice I've ever received, I think it was back in, I might have discovered this in my freshman or sophomore year of college. Um, there is this guy by the name of Simon Sinek, and he talks about basically how companies and large businesses operate within their respective industries. And he kind of described it as three circles. We have one inner circle, and in that inner circle is the why. And then there's a circle that surrounds that, and that's labeled with how. And the circle that encompasses that all is the what. And what he described was that a lot of companies like to work from the outside in, starting with what is it that we should do? What's our product to try and get the people to want. But what he describes is that we should actually be starting from the inside and working outwards, meaning that we should be starting with the why, the purpose. And once we start figuring out what the purpose is behind everything that we do or why we do it, it yields a much more quality product that is geared towards who we're trying to make it for. And that, I think, translates directly into number one, learning curriculum throughout school, and especially two, the real world experience where you're working on a project and it's like, all right, what is the purpose of this project? What are we really trying to do for our community and for those that are looking for our service? Like, why are we doing what we do? And then we focus on how should we do that. And so with that in mind, working from the inside out, it's kind of how I've been able to approach every single task that I'm ever given in my life, no matter how big or how small it is. I always try and start with the why, the purpose.
Awesome. No, I think I remember seeing that. We'll leave a link in show descriptions, but yeah, I think I've seen that. It was in that YouTube video. He kind of goes over some
Yeah,
of that too. Yeah,
exactly.
discovering your why, I think, puts a lot of things into focus on projects as to how they align with what's going on with the company and goals and community. I think that's great advice. Good advice. All right. What is a personal habit that contributes to your success as an engineer or person?
Yeah, so just a tiny story. I'll try and keep it short. It was my first internship, and I was still trying to figure out Excel. And everyone that's listening to this is probably gonna laugh at me, but like, in the Excel columns we have, A, B, C, D, E, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was working on a schedule, and you know, it was A, B, C, E. I'm like, where's D? Where's D? Like, and I'm like
Excel's
clicking on,
broken.
and I know, right? I'm like clicking. I'm like, I can't. Where's D? I'm like clicking on C. I'm clicking on E. I'm like, where is it? And so, you know, I remember at the beginning of my internship, my boss said, make sure you ask questions. I'm gonna ask a lot of questions. And so I like, raised my hand, like, hey, I have a question. How can I show D? And then my boss like looks at me. He's like, come on, Jed. You gotta figure things out before you ask questions. And so like that moment, no matter how dumb I felt, I still look back at that and approach every challenge that I have like before I ask a question. Like, how much of this can I really figure out? How much of my resources can I exhaust before I am faced with asking for help? And I think it's really a good skill for me that I've been able to attain, because it's helped me to develop self-sufficient learning, where I'm not necessarily like or using others as a crutch for my learning. I'm making it more of a deep learning process rather than a superficial learning. So
Smart.
yeah.
We got people calling me here. I'm gonna turn this off.
You're so popular, Isaac.
It's probably my wife. I'm like, what are you doing? Just kidding.
Number one fan.
Anyway, well, no, I love that advice, and even in earlier podcast episodes, maybe we can find those. But I've done one with my brother Mark, where he outlines a lot of times when he's worked with other engineers, and when they come up to him with questions, he really appreciates when they've put in the work before they answer before they come up and ask him what the heck they should be doing. If you do your homework and your research and try to even come up with a few solutions yourself, like, hey, we could do this or this or this, that helps. And I think it helps you too do, like you said, deep learning and really exhaust your resources. I love that. Okay, well, how about this? What's someone you look up to, and why do you look up to them?
I look up to two people, actually, and those two people are my mom and my dad. And I say that without hesitation, because they didn't grow up here in America. They're actually from the Philippines.
Okay.
And I was as I grew up, I never really realized how much they really did for me until actually recently, when I just got married. I was the last one to get married in my family. I'm the last child left. And looking back, I can see exactly what they did in order to give us everything that we needed. They literally gave their lives in order to give us our lives. And I think it's just it's a statue in my memory forever of who they are as parents, and why they did what they did was to make sure that we had a life here in America, a life that they didn't have when they grew up. And I think that's a universal, approach to humanity, giving others what we don't have, so that they may be able to have a better future. And
That's
I think
fantastic.
I think it's just a great example from them as parents.
Yeah, I mean, that probably takes a lot to do that and kind of start over, I imagine, for them. But look, I mean, the opportunities that you have here, I think are great. It's a great country. And despite what's going on in the world right now, it's still the best place, for opportunities and growth. And it's just an amazing place. So, wow, that's great. Your parents must be awesome. And how many siblings are there? you said?
There's just three of us. I have two
Mhm.
older sisters, and then there's me.
Okay. And the
Yeah.
engineering falls in for all of them, or just the sister, you?
Just I guess the sciences really kind of fell in within the entire family because
Okay.
my other older sister, she studied kinesiology, uh,
Oh, wow.
exercise science, and so she did well with that career path as well.
You guys are all smart. That's great. Your parents did something right. Just kidding. That's awesome.
Something.
Well, good deal, man. What's a nice resource, I guess, for I guess you could recommend for the engineering community or our community here at CEA. They could be dealing with leadership, education, engineering, something that's fun. What's something that you've come across that you're like, that was a good book. I could share that, with others.
Yeah, definitely. I actually have the book right here with
Ooh,
me,
what's that?
and it's called the TED Talks book, and it's written by the guy that is the head of TED. Um,
Wow.
and the reason why I like this book so much is because it says it's an official guide to public speaking, but I think it's really more than that. If anything, it's a way that um, it gives you ways to connect with people. It's not just about, how can I speak during a presentation. It's something that, obviously civil engineers really need to get used to is public
Mm-hmm.
presentations and communication. But it's a much more deeper level as far as connecting with the individuals that you work with, or and it's all about spreading an idea to others and how you could also receive other people's ideas as well. And so I think it's a very all-encompassing book that can be applied to just about everything in your life, whether it be, within your family or within your professional development.
Wow, that's awesome. And does that book, I haven't never checked that one out, but does it have, it's just a bunch of TED Talks, or is it a book he like wrote that talks about the TED Talks? How does that?
Yeah, it's a book that he wrote that helps you understand. First of all, like, why is it that public speaking is like obviously the most feared thing above everyone's minds right now?
Oh yeah.
Like, why is
It's
it
higher
that
than dying.
it's
I remember
yeah,
taking public speaking and it's like
yeah,
higher
exactly.
than dying.
Higher than dying, higher than
Okay.
heights, higher than tarantulas. It's just like it's amazing how and he talks about how you can overcome that and use your speaking to influence and inspire others. And it's not, and he gives some examples, and he gives not necessarily a formula, but he gives you almost kind of like what Simon Sinek does, like the why and the how
Mm-hmm.
and the production out of it. And so,
What's, just to go along with that, something I've learned it's in my own studies and listening and things of that nature. I thought this was really interesting, but I heard that to become a better public speaker and to speak out loud and to share your thoughts, it's very helpful, I've heard, to actually read a book out loud. Like if you have children, read to them out loud. And then you hear, you're hearing what you're saying, you hear your voice and things of that nature. I just thought that was a real cool, real world tip when I heard that if you can read a book out loud, you become a better speaker because you can, you're putting words together and you're hearing yourself and you're getting in the habit of talking out loud.
yeah,
So
yeah.
anyway, that's cool.
No, that's great actually. I'm not sure if you've heard of the rubber duck method.
Mm-mm.
Um, it's basically like it happens a lot. I think coders use it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And what it is, it's like they literally have like a rubber duck on their desk, and whenever they get stuck with a problem, they'll like talk it out. They'll literally like talk out the entire problem
Really?
to this rubber duck. And for some reason, I don't know what it is with like psychologically, there's something about like speaking out loud that actually also helps you to solve problems a little bit easier than if you were to try and keep it inside your own head.
That's very
So
true. I'll
I've
do
used that
that.
throughout my entire life too. So
I'll do that in my cubicle at work sometimes though, and people are like, "You talking to yourself?" It's like, yeah, but leave me
you don't?
alone. Well, that's cool. I'm glad I'm not, that it's an okay thing to do. It's an actual method. That's good.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. This last one's just kind of a fun question, but if you had all the resources in the world or engineering knowledge in the world, what's something you'd like to be a part of?
So I have a really big passion for transportation engineering, and I was kind of like thinking, about how much sci-fi really pushes technology bounds within the real world. And if you kind of think about it, teleportation is kind of like transportation, and so like,
Nice.
can that fall in the world of transportation engineering? Sure,
Beam me
so
up,
like
Scotty. Make it happen.
exactly. So honestly, like if I had all the resources and all the power in the world, I think, you know, transportation or teleportation rather would be such a
That's
cool
awesome.
thing to bring to life.
I love that.
So yeah,
Well, that's very cool. Well, we'll let you work on that. Start reading some more and figure out how to do that. I won't be your first test subject though. I don't want to.
no, I think I'll leave that to someone else that I'm not a fan of. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Oh man. Well, I appreciate you coming onto the show. I think this has been really fun. You've shared a lot of great advice with people. I guess as we conclude, is there any last piece of guidance you want to share with people, and what's also the best way for those in the community that might want to connect with you if they had questions about something?
Definitely. I think last piece of guidance I would say is to never think that you're done learning. I definitely had that mindset when I was about to graduate college. I remember talking with my buddies like, all right, man, like we're about to graduate, we're about to, no more homework. Once we come home from work, you just get to chill when we get home, no more homework. And then, boy, was I wrong when I found out I had to start studying for the PE exam as soon as I got to work.
Never
But
ends.
I think just knowing that it just never ends, never think that learning stops. And it's just gonna, grow with you throughout your year, of course. And for me, as a way to contact me, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm constantly checking LinkedIn. I'm doing this digital minimalist thing where I've blocked out other forms of social media, and so all I really do now is
Yeah.
just browse LinkedIn.
Hey, that works.
Yeah, and so I'm on LinkedIn all the time. You can email me at jed.jason.ramos@gmail.com as well.
Okay.
I'm always looking out for anyone that's has questions for me.
Great.
So yeah.
I appreciate that. Like I said, this has been fantastic for me. I think you've shared a lot of great tips with people out there. I love hearing people's stories and how they got into engineering, how they passed their exams or what struggles they went through, because we can all relate with these things. And I just think it's good for everyone to hear and know that we can overcome challenges. You've overcome challenges. We can do hard things. So that's great, man. I appreciate you coming on the show. And we'll catch up next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Isaac.
All right. See you later.
Bye.